speaking from experience here, if you're looking to build viewers, subscribers, whatever it is exactly, I'll tell you early days for my YouTube channel. We have a leveling up channel. And when I was consistent and I was only focused on one subject, that's when it started to compound, where most of my videos would get 20, 30, 40, 50,000 views. Some would get a couple 100,000 views or so. And I was growing like really fast. And I was only focused on talking about one subject, which was marketing. The moment I started talking about other stuff, investing, startups, NFTs, whatever, the algorithm was kind of like, whoa, what are you trying to do here? And it starts, there's like, wait, you're not focused anymore. Like, we're going to give the reach to somebody else. And so specifically for YouTube, for me, now we're just focused, we're just locked in on one topic and we're kind of like rejiggering or we're reviving it. And I would say that's the same thing that applies to, let's say you're doing a podcast. Like if you start talking about all this different stuff, there's a little more leeway with podcasts, but you generally want to stay around the same area. So for example, marketing school, it just so happens that my business partner and I on that one, we're both operators. And so sometimes we'll talk about investing, we'll talk about startups, we'll talk about marketing, but we generally stay around the same area. Same thing for the other channels too. So that's what I would say. It's the consistency piece and it's the focus. Most people on YouTube and podcasts, they tend to give up after the first 6 months or so. And they will say, oh, it just didn't work for me.
Yeah. And for any of you listening to this, and I'm sure we'll both say the same thing. The magic in YouTube is be consistent and persistent. And like you said, most give up after 3 to 6 months because it's too much work and they're not getting anything. You're 3 feet from gold, because the average time you look at any of these people on YouTube that have millions of subscribers, it's almost a mathematical equation. It's usually 5 to 7 years of consistent content that they've put out. Even if their content was crap in the beginning, it will get better as they've got better editors. But that's always what I've seen. Eric, what would you say is the magic for YouTube? Would you agree with that? Or would you say I'm missing something looking at that?
Yeah, I'm just, to be honest, I'm looking at your YouTube channel right now, and the stuff is stuff that I'm interested in. The content is stuff I'm interested in. And what I found over the years, I've seen this in 2 occasions. So one was my YouTube channel where I just kept going. And then all of a sudden, it seemed to hit escape velocity and all the videos started to get a boost. Everything started growing at once. And I actually remember Alex Hormozi, for those of you that watch this guy, I remember 2 years ago or so, his channel was much smaller than mine, but I just noticed he was hitting that escape velocity and all of his videos were pumping. And now he's at, 1.1, 1.2 million subs. Here's the other thing I'll say. The subs don't matter as much on YouTube. So I've talked to a lot of creators. I was just at a private creator event in Vegas a couple weeks ago. It's really the views that matter.
Views. That's what you get paid on. The views. Yep.
The views. And to your point, it's the views and the engagement. So if you have like 1 million views on a channel, but like 1 comment, there's something off. You probably bought those views, to your point. But if it's like there's like a ratio where you have maybe 1% or 0.5% of your people commenting, you probably have something legit. So that's all I would say. It's consistency. I mean, look, who's the ultimate beacon for consistency with YouTube? It's Mr. Beast. So
Mr. Beast for sure. And, I'll second that with Evan Carmichael as, somebody that just has been just unbelievable consistent in their content. And look at them. I mean, they make millions and millions of dollars every single year just in YouTube revenue. And that's just a piece of their business model. Mm-hmm. So it's really wild. And I think a lot of people just want to try to beat the system, cheat the system, or get rich quick. And there is no get rich quick. It's get rich slow. And actually, I don't even want to use the word rich. I want to use get wealthy slow, because it's a marathon. And so is building a business. So is building any marketing campaign. It takes time. So let's just transition a little bit over. Like, what is your future plans? Like, you've got this marketing company, and I know we talked a little bit about possibly buying up some competitors, and you've got these 2 podcasts. Like, what's your end goal? Like, what are you trying to do? Because I know you're not just out there looking for every single customer. You're very clear on your website. We're not really taking on all new clients. We will review it. Send us the info. I love that, because it makes you realize that you're real and you don't need every new client.
Right. So for us, being selective about who we work with, being selective about who I hang out with in general, like that's very important. And so that's ultimately it's up to the agency at the end of the day. Like, I'm just there to kind of say, hey, like, this is how we used to do things. Like, take it for what it is. This is my vision behind it. Like, go ahead. Because my whole thing for me personally is I'm just going to continue to compound whatever it is I'm doing around my content, because that's one of the ultimate forms of leverage. And I will bring the distribution, I will bring the traffic. And it just so happens to be that the agency is one of my monetization models. And what I mean by that is vehicles. Okay. So monetization vehicle, one of the ones I have is the agency. Now, if you look at Mr. Beast, he drives a ton of traffic. Okay. They go to Feastables, which is his chocolate bars. They go to Beast Burger, right? And whatever else that he's doing. He's actually doing something that's coming soon that I just realized a couple of weeks ago that I'm a part of, but I digress. So if you look at all, like The Rock, he has his tequila, right? And so for me, it's okay, I'm going to build as much traffic as I can around business, marketing, startups, investing. And, my ICP, my ideal client profile is going to be founders. Some founders will need marketing help. They can go to the ad agency. Some could go to the founders mastermind. Some could go to the newsletter. Some can go to whatever it is that I'm going to have in terms of monetization vehicles in the future. So that is the end goal. And the other thing I'll say to answer your question is, in 3 weeks or so, I'm going with a handful of entrepreneurs to Turkey, and it's a really small group. It's 8 of us. You can call it a mastermind, but I think it's too small to be a mastermind, but everyone's different. One person has a WordPress holding company. He just buys WordPress businesses. The other guy has a pet holding company. He just buys pet companies. The other guy has a SaaS that does $300 million a year. Everyone is at a really high level with whatever it is they're doing. They just are really focused. And you talk to anybody, we've talked about this a couple of years ago. I'm like, guys, why do we do this? And it's like, man, like, we don't need to work, but it's like the game. They said it, not me.
Back to the game.
Yep.
I love it. I love it. And if you think of it as a game, I mean, you never reach the top. There's never an arrival syndrome, because, a lot of people do suffer from that. They reach a certain goal and they're like, I've arrived. Mm-hmm. And guess what you're going to do? You're going to go right back down the other side. So you always got to push that envelope. And I love thinking of it as a game, because there's never an end to a game. It just keeps on going on.
Yep. It's the journey, right? People talk about, I mean, as cliche as it sounds, people talk about, oh, we want to enjoy the journey. Well, the journey is the game. And then when you die, it's like, well, you might say, oh my God, I own all these assets or whatever, but like, no, you're dead. You don't really own anything. And so like, the end game, I would say, is you've had so much fun and you've donated all of it at the end of it. And that's Absolutely. That, like, you're not trying to leave it to, at least for me, I'm not trying to leave it to legacy, because I know that money that isn't unearned is going to be squandered. And so if you haven't learned to wield the power of earning money, or like just money in general, like it's going to go to waste. People are going to get lazy, and it's going to just be not a good outcome for your family or whoever it is that inherits it. So,
Eric, I think that's really important that you brought that up. This is the Money School podcast, and I talk about this all the time, and a lot of people listening may not understand this yet. But if you seek the truth, it shall find you. And that is, when we're younger and we're building businesses, it's all about me. It's about money, more things, and then you start getting the nice cars, and then you got the nice house, and maybe you're buying nice watches, which I don't wear watches. I don't even wear nice clothes anymore, just because I just don't care anymore. Mm-hmm. But what you'll find, and you can really study rappers. I love watching like the rappers from the 80s and the 90s. They were all blinged out back then. They were rolling their 5-0s and everything else. And I could get that a little bit wrong, but listen, I'm old. I'm 45. And then all of a sudden, if you look at them now, totally different game. Mm-hmm. Folks, when you get to a certain level of wealth, you don't need any more money. You'll get to the point where you can have all the cars. And maybe you did. Maybe you tried them all. Maybe you got them in the garage, but you can only drive 1 or 2 cars, right? Maybe you got 10 cars. You can only drive 1 at a time. Maybe you got 3 houses. You can only live at 1 at a time. And then life changes, and you start realizing there's something that'll happen. Maybe it's a child or something else, where you start realizing that life isn't about things. Life really isn't even about money. And you'll realize money is just a tool. And it's how you use that tool that gets you to the next level. And what I found that my greatest joy, the greatest thing I get, is giving. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't mean just going out and giving money to anybody, but I mean going out and doing real things. And when I set up my complex trust structure and my foundation, my sole goal in life changed, because everything with my daughter, who's almost 3, is all about teaching her the truth about money. And then someday she'll just own and operate and run the trust and the foundation, and she'll just figure out how to do good in the world and give. And you all know this. Zig Ziglar said it best. You'll get all you want in life if you just help enough people get what they want. And I think that's what you were saying. It was interesting that, you held up, there's no watch. Like, we don't need watches. We don't need fancy suits. We don't even need fancy cars. to be so fulfilled in life. And that doesn't mean that just because we've reached this level, Eric and I, that we don't want more. Heck, I want to keep building. I want to build companies that I sell for hundreds of millions of dollars. But when I get the hundreds of millions, that's the difference. I don't want $100 million so I can go buy a jet or another car. I want $100 million so I can go change and help more people solve their problems. It's a whole different game.
You know, one thing, Chris, I think that's well said. One thing you triggered in my mind was this whole concept of wealth. And what I've learned, you know, I used to think wealth is, it's assets, it's time or whatever. But the reality is that wealth is actually knowledge. There's one thing that outlives the concept of money or Bitcoin or your physical things or even you and me. It's knowledge, and knowledge continues to compound over time. It will compound forever, basically.